Okay, it is 7:30 on the dot, and I want to welcome everyone to our March Gladness 5-day challenge. This is day one of the challenge. Thank you all for joining us. I'm so glad that you are here. I'm also so glad to have a special guest with us tonight. Before we get to our special guest, though, I want to always, each evening, share a little bit about me. You probably heard my story last night. I'm not going to repeat that. You can always go and watch the kickoff replay. But there was a part of my story I did not talk much about, and that part was about the anger I experienced internally after surviving those two abusive relationships. That anger actually held me back as well. I wasn't walking around like I was mad at the world, but internally, I was hiding the anger in my heart. And sometimes we don't even know how bad we are hurting until we look back and see, wow, that was a rough spot. We are trained in our mind to just go ahead and fight through, and we go ahead and do things that we think would help us along the way in our daily lives, but we're just kind of like struggling through the moment and not really living life. There's so many days I look back and like, where did my life go? Because I was living in a place of anger and not happiness and gladness. And that was part of the whole reason I call this March Gladness and not March Madness. One of the things that I want to read to you is this quote. It says, "I am gifted for the purpose of letting my light shine to glorify God. Stay alert, keep doing what you're doing. And when you least expect it, the thing God promised will come to pass. It's always darkest before dawn." And for me, as a survivor of domestic violence, that struck with me because, I know that there's a purpose and plan for each and every person's life. I don't always understand why we go through such hardships and pain in life, but I do know it makes you a stronger and better person. I would not be here tonight conducting this interview or with talking to any of the ladies over the next few days if it wasn't for me going through what I went through. No, I don't wish it on anyone. I would not want to repeat that area of my life, but I know there's been a purpose in my pain, and I know what I have birthed and who I have become since surviving abuse. I don't know if I would be the same person today had it not been for overcoming those challenges. So, last night I talked about resilience, and tonight I really want to focus on just bouncing back and releasing the past pain. One other thing I want to say is that you can exercise power over your attitude and actions. And sometimes when we are operating from a place of anger and hurt, we don't have power over our emotions. We don't have power over our actions. And that's not just for us who are survivors, but that's also for the person who perpetrated the violence. I recently went to Florida in February, and I was staying at a hotel. Some girlfriends had a weekend trip for a birthday. We tried to be safe because, COVID is still going on. But at the hotel one morning, we were sitting in the lobby area having breakfast. A young lady walked out her room and started screaming, and I couldn't really understand what she was saying because English is not her first language. But I thought that she was saying, "Help, my child is not breathing," because there were two little ones standing in the doorway with her. So I was like, "Hey, is there a nurse in the building?" Because, even though I know CPR, I've never actually performed it. So I was hoping there was a nurse or doctor in the building. And there was someone who went up to the room. But when they got upstairs, she actually wasn't saying help because of a child. She was saying, "Help, he's beating her." So in the room next to her, she could hear someone in a domestic dispute. The police were called, but when they got there, the lady did not want to leave. And a lot of people standing around did not understand that. Here, your help has arrived and you're going to stay in this situation. But what people don't understand is sometimes people are stuck. And I'm not going to say they don't want to leave. It's just that the place where they are in their mind, they don't feel like they can leave. And after you get out that abusive situation, sometimes you feel like you still can't leave. You may not be physically with the person, but emotionally, mentally, and just even spiritually, you are still stuck. And being stuck can cause such anger that you begin to dislike life. At the end of this 5-day challenge, I hope that each night we give each listener some kind of nugget to help them get unstuck and move on with their lives. And tonight, I wanted to kick off with a professional because, like I said, I'm not a counselor. I'm always speaking to you from my own personal experiences. And I hope that by sharing my story, it helps someone else to get out and to heal after they have left that abusive relationship. I've known this individual, I think, all my life because we actually attended the same high school. So she is a wonderful person, beautiful inside and out. And I'm so proud of her because, we both came from a small town and we both love homes. I'm not putting our home down, but we had small beginnings and we're both doing big things right now. And I appreciate how she is impacting the world and impacting individual lives. We don't always hear about people who are making a difference. They're not always the famous people that we hear about. They're not always, and I hate to pull up this name, Derek Jackson. We all heard about him and we know what's going on now. But she is someone who is living her life truthfully and to its fullest. And she's helping other people do the same. So Dr. LaTasha Mcllwain is a native of Georgetown, South Carolina. Like I said, she specializes in mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, couples, premarital counseling. She is part of the Prepared and Rich Counselor program or accolades that she has. She's a Prime for Life instructor, clinical supervisor, business consultant. She also is a professor. Before we started, I was asking her about the classes she teaches. She is a woman who does it all. I don't know how she does it, but I love it that she's doing it, which is proof, ladies, and gentlemen, that no matter what, you can have it all. You may not be able to have it all at the same time, but if you consistently work towards your goals, you can certainly achieve it. She's the founder of Insightful Options, and she also has a nonprofit, and she's raised 2 beautiful young men who are helping her help others in their journeys. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to, like I said, this woman is a very powerful, and she's going to give us some words of wisdom tonight, Dr. LaTasha Mcllwain.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I really appreciate it. Love that intro. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here tonight. I am so happy to be able to speak with everyone in regards to domestic violence and like Rhonda mentioned, kind of being stuck or feeling like, you have gone through one relationship and then here's another one and kind of feeling, oh boy, just want to give that encouragement that, we all go through things. We all get kind of in those moments where we feel like, yeah, there's a lot going on and I feel like I'm just in it and not really making an impact on, what's happening and what's going on around me. But in any case, I think we have to all think about the kind of trauma that we're dealing with from everything and that we can overcome it and we can come to a better state in our lives. I do believe a lot of times when you're thinking about, I know Rhonda mentioned being angry with yourself. I think that's something that all of us deal with. That's just a natural consequence in general, I believe, when it comes down to something happening and things going on. And I always tell everyone it's how we were raised. We were raised with certain how can I say it? Certain culture, sometimes it's the cultural differences, sometimes it's, our religion, sometimes it's, spiritual. It's just a lot of different things that we're raised with that we feel like, okay, these things are happening. Why are they happening? How can I get better? Well, I don't know how to get better. I don't feel like I have those tools. So a lot of times it's really digging deep and it's really reaching out to someone else. It's reaching out to, if it's not a private person, I always tell everyone for years, my grandma was the person that I reached out to for everything before her passing. But I think a lot of times if it's not a family member or, someone that's private and close to you, you can reach out to a professional and let them know kind of what's happening and what's going on. You know, we've had some interesting situations where individuals have reached out to church members or members of the clergy and not necessarily felt like they've been assisted in those ways, not knocking the church or anything. But a lot of times I do tell individuals that there are individuals out here that are specially trained to work with individuals on, especially with domestic violence, on both sides of the spectrum. We're able to work with the perpetrator, we're able to work with the victims, we're able to work with the victims' kids, we're able to work with, just family members around the situation. So we do a lot to try to encourage individuals to reach out. And that's my big thing today is empowering individuals that what you're going through, it is your story. Don't get me wrong. It's your story. Yes, indeed it is. However, there are other individuals out there, just like Rhonda's saying, that are dealing with some of the same things and don't know how to reach out. And sometimes we have to be a voice for them and let them know that it's safe to reach out when you're ready to reach out. And a lot of times, I always, give the hard part of it is that, we want you to reach out before it's too late. We want you to reach out before something happens that's just, drastic and detrimental to you. We want you to reach out, but we understand that sometimes reaching out right then and there is not, like you said, the lady, she would not leave with the police. She just didn't feel it. She didn't feel it.
Yes. And I think everyone, including the family members, they have to realize that what's going on in that woman's mind, they probably just will never understand it because hopefully they're never in that situation. And there's such a stigma around seeking help, which is problematic for me because after I got out those relationships, my daughter was about 6 years old. So, and it wasn't with her father, but I took her to a counselor to make sure she was not negatively affected. But guess what? I didn't go to counseling.
Wow.
I did not go to counseling until years later. It was at least probably 15 years later.
Yeah.
And when I went to counseling, I really still, parts of me was like, I don't need this counseling because there's such a negative stigma around it. But I know so many things have been happening in the world, especially with COVID. People are now talking about mental health and it's not shameful anymore because you have that double stigma. One, you're in an abusive relationship. You're shamed and embarrassed by that, even though it's not your fault. And then two, now you need to seek mental help. And when you say mental, people just already automatically think something's wrong. But, I know pastors who go regularly to counseling because look how they are pouring out every week. And then they are taking on other people's burdens every week or however often they're speaking to people in the congregation. So they also have to have a place to release, which again is our word for time, release. And there were times when I was angry because both my abusers seemed to just move on with their life, like nothing ever happened, and later that anger and those experiences, they caused me to self-sabotage good things coming into my life. And that self-sabotage was sometimes a defense mechanism for me. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, how does one let go of anger?
All right. So letting go of anger is one of those things where it's going to take a moment to really get into what's going on mentally. A lot of times I do tell everyone that I think the word of the night is release. Yeah. The word of the maybe since the early 2000s is trauma. Mm-hmm. And trauma is a big word that people feel like, oh my goodness, I don't want to. But we start to deal with trauma, which people don't realize this. We start dealing with trauma from the time that our mother is giving birth to us. Okay. Mm-hmm. The trauma of childbirth. Okay. So it's a lot for us to even, come into this world. So when I think about trauma, I always try to lighten it up with that is that we deal with trauma from the day that we're actually birthed into the world. But when it comes to trauma, we kind of deal with it to a point where we start to experience it as children, as we're growing up, as we're going through school, as we, get into these relationships with our parents, different things that are going on. And everyone's level of trauma is different. So when we're talking about release, one of the things that I always like to go to is saying that we have to figure out what those traumas are in our lives. We have to figure out what they are and how they impacted us and how they kind of shaped our future and how we want to look at it and say, okay, I have to kind of deal with it, know it, and then deal with it. Like accept that it's happened and deal with it and really put myself in a place that I can actually move forward by doing the things that I need to do to really be who I am as a person. Because some of those trauma type situations will take you to another level where you don't feel like you're yourself anymore. You'll feel like you're someone else. And I think you mentioned that earlier, not feeling like you're who you are. So that's one of the big things about that release is really seeking out and knowing what your trauma is. Kind of like putting a name on it or putting a stamp on it and really saying that, okay, I'm willing to work through this. I know it's happened. I need to look at it, accept it for what it is, and figure out how this trauma can be something kind of a light in my life to see or to share with other people that I can move on. And that's a part of the release process right there, is just really accepting, taking on and understanding this happened. And sometimes there's a reason why things happen, and sometimes there's no reason at all why it happened. However, you have to be the one to say that I know why this happened, or I don't know why this happened, but this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to face this and move forward. So having that release is doing things like what you're doing tonight is a release to me. It's something where you're able to give back to other people and say, hey, I've been there, done that. How can I help? This is what I did. And I always tell everyone self-care is the main thing, because when you say sabotaging, that's kind of where we forget to take care of ourselves, and we're all over the place taking care of everything else and everyone else. Your daughter went to counseling first, all of that stuff. You really have to dig deep. And like I say all the time, I'm not telling everyone that professional counseling is what you truly need, but I'm telling everyone that you really need to dig deep. So coming up with a plan for release would really be digging deep. Some people dig deep with meditation. Some people dig deep with prayer. Some people dig deep by talking to someone else. Some people dig deep by taking a walk every day. Some people dig deep by just going, and doing their worship, prayer, but then a big part of worship also. So there are so many different ways and so many different areas that you can actually start to release and taking care of yourself. Self-care is huge.
Yes. And people don't understand how important it is to dig deep. I know you also do marital counseling. I had a friend one time told me when he went to marital counseling, he only went because his future wife wanted to do it. But when they started counseling, he found out he was the one who needed more than she did and more than they needed it for the marriage. He individually did not realize how deep they'd gotten into, because you always talk about your upbringing, your beliefs, what you're rooted in. And then he realized, wow, he was the one who really needed the counseling. So I always tell people, erase that stigma, just go. Sometimes you just need somebody outside of your inner circle to really give you a point of view or help you to reflect upon yourself. When I went to counseling, my counselor gave me a book called Addicted to Pain. And when she told me she wanted me to read that book, I was a little offended, like, you think I'm addicted to pain? Really? Nah, but I'll read the book just because she asked me to. She's like, it's going to be a requirement. When I opened that book and started reading it, I realized I was looking in the mirror. This was my story. This was me. I would not describe myself as addicted to pain. But when I read that book, I was like, oh, Lord, yeah, I need to work through this. This is making me dig deep, and sometimes we are attracted to what's familiar. Yes. And we are comfortable in certain things, even if it's things that are detrimental to us. And
Yes.
so I don't know. I just could not believe it. I was kind of in shock. But then as I went through the book, it helped me release some things so that I could be better in my future. Now, are there any books that you recommend us to read?
Yes. So there are a few books that I typically use in practice, and I have a list of them. I'm just going to name a few of them though. So a lot of times when you're dealing with domestic violence, we have a whole lot of workbooks that we always say, hey, workbooks, speak workbooks, workbooks, because workbooks are going to be how you can kind of paste things together and kind of piece together a better future for yourself. So one of the workbooks that we do recommend a lot of time is Recovery and Rebuilding Domestic Violence Workbook, which is moving on from the partner abused. We usually use the paperback book. And that one is by Stacy Funderburg. I think I'm saying her name right, Funderburg. Yes. And she's a PhD, of course. So she's one of the ones that we definitely utilize her books a lot in our services. And then we kind of piggyback a little bit with our Surviving Domestic Violence Abuse handbook as well. And that one's by Ellis. So we kind of piggyback with the two with most of our patients. And then just for basic reading, like just wanting to hear stories of what's happened to other people and how to kind of move forward. Basically, Surviving Domestic Violence, voices of women who broke free, of course, from their partners and everything. And that one's by Elaine Wise. We use that one. And one of the ones that we do talking about trauma is the Your Life After Trauma. And that was the powerful practice of reclaiming your identity. That one's by Michelle Rosenthal. So those are a few of the ones that we kind of recommend to our patients as well, and try to, get them to be able to utilize some of those. And we get a lot of good feedback from those books. So definitely wanted to share those tonight.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for those resources, because I think for people who may not want to reach out, maybe they're still afraid or they're not ready, that they now have those resources. And for me, like I said, that book was very impactful, because I was like, how can one even be addicted to pain? I couldn't register that even psychologically. How can you be addicted to pain?
Yes.
It happens. It happens and we don't even know it.
It does.
Yes, we've got about 5 more minutes before we wrap up. So I do want to find out if there's any closing remarks you have that you just want to share with our audience, and also how do they contact you?
Okay. So I think my final remarks here is just that, like I said, if you feel the need to reach out to us or reach out to someone, that is a great thing. But if you feel that you are just not ready yet, or just not, ready to make that move, using some of the workbooks that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, those are some of the kind of the curriculums that we use to work with a lot of our patients, and they've been very helpful. So I hope those resources are going to be very impactful to a lot of you that are here tonight. Also, just, find your place of comfort. I will say that is going to be the biggest thing, is finding your place of comfort with any and everyone that's kind of dealing with a lot, and realizing that you are important and you can take care of yourself. And that, of course, getting there, sometimes it's a journey. We all are on a journey and have been on that same journey. So yes, I will say that. And as far as contacting me, I do have a couple of websites where you can contact me, Dr. LaTasha Mcllwain.com, as well as insightfuloptions.com. Excuse me, and let me say that right, insightful-options.com. Those are my websites. We have numbers where you can actually reach out to us. Typically, I don't tell this all the time, but those numbers usually come directly to me. So if you're calling Insightful Options and you're looking to speak with someone, you're probably going to be speaking to me first. So I always tell everyone, if you call the number, you will get me.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And I know you have been in business since, I think, 2000 and was it 2002?
2000, actually 6 is when I started the business, but I've been practicing since 2003.
Okay, I knew it was close. Okay. And
Yes.
listen, there'll be people watching who, I know you're licensed in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia.
That
I
is
know that
correct.
there'll be people watching who may be from those states. So I want to let everyone know that she's giving one complimentary session to someone. If you feel like you definitely need it, but maybe you cannot afford it, please reach out to her because you will have a complimentary session with Dr. Mcllwain. So I just want to appreciate and thank you for doing that. I know that it will help someone. And so please get in touch with her. Do not be ashamed that you need help. And don't be ashamed to even ask for help. Like I said, if it's something where you have a financial need, that's already covered. So you can have that session with her. Because most importantly, we want women to heal. We want you to get over that past pain. We want you to live your best life. There is no reason anyone should walk around this earth unhappy because you have everything within you that you need to be happy. God created us in his image, and we may not be perfect. And I know we live on this earth and nothing is perfect, but I promise you, you can have perfect happiness as you walk through your life's journey. I want to thank everyone for joining me this evening. I will send out the replay to those who registered. So you will have this information, all those resources. You can go back and listen to it and find those books, and also reach out to Dr. LaTasha Mcllwain. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a good evening. Thank you. Goodbye.